IPVanish protects every device you own. Your phone, your laptop, your smart TV. If it connects to the internet, it should be protected. IPVanish encrypts your connection and masks your IP address, helping keep your browsing private at home and on public Wi-Fi. And with no device limits, one account covers everything. Stream with added privacy, browse securely, connect with confidence. Online protection made simple. Right now, save 83% off the 2-year plan. Get started today at ipvanish.com/audio and take control of your privacy with IPVanish. IPVanish protects every device you own. Your phone, your laptop, your smart TV. If it connects to the internet, it should be protected. IPVanish encrypts your connection and masks your IP address, helping keep your browsing private at home and on public Wi-Fi. And with no device limits, one account covers everything. Stream with added privacy, browse securely, connect with confidence. Online protection made simple. Right now, save 83% off the 2-year plan. Get started today at ipvanish.com/audio and take control of your privacy with IPVanish.
Welcome to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast, the show that explores the background of Tolkien's amazing world from the very beginning. So picking up where we left off last time, the dwarves finish singing their song, and Bilbo is pulled out of his trance. So remember, he starts actually envisioning this majestic scenery that they're describing, the mountains and the trees and the waterfalls. And then some fire leaps up outside, and it pulls him out of it. And all of a sudden, he's like a deer in headlights. Here's what it says. He got up trembling. He had less than half a mind to fetch the lamp, and more than half a mind to pretend to, and go and hide behind the beer barrels in the cellar, and not come out again until all the dwarves had gone away. Suddenly, he found that the music and the singing had stopped, and they were all looking at him with eyes shining in the dark. And the dark and the light becomes a theme of this section, because it's very dark. The time has moved on from the evening into the night, and although it feels like who knows how much time has gone by while they've been singing their songs, we know that it's still many hours until morning. And as Bilbo tries to figure out what to do, the idea of going for the light or pretending to go for the light or whatever he's trying to decide, Thorin sends a question his way. Where are you going? It's directed to the point, but we also find out from the narrator that Thorin seems to be able to read Bilbo's mind. And what we're getting here is an understanding of who Thorin is in a little bit more detail, in a very brief moment here. We know that he is experienced enough to be able to read a situation and to understand maybe what Bilbo feels in this situation. And there's also a semblance of an attempt to control it. By pointing out that he's leaving, he's attempting to manipulate the result. It's a subtle thing, but it's there. And Bilbo talks about, I need to go get a light. And then the dwarves all say together, we like the dark. Dark for dark business. There are many hours before dawn. And this makes sense. They're dwarves. They live underground. Most of their world is dark most of the time. But there's more to it. Dark for dark business. Because they are plotting to overthrow a dragon and take back their home. And of course, Bilbo says, and he sits back down, getting the point that Thorin was trying to make. And of course, he fumbles around a bit and makes some noise. And then we get a glimpse of Gandalf's personality here. He's been so pleasant and so nice, and yet in this moment he says, "Hush, let Thorin speak." We get a little bit of grumpy Gandalf for the first time, which is wonderful, because as we come to know Gandalf more and more throughout this book and The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf can be kind of grumpy sometimes, and it's part of his charm. And so Thorin speaks. I guess you could say that this actually starts the business proceedings of the night. They've already had their music and their food, and now they're down to business. And we get a sense of exactly what kind of leader Thorin is. He says, Gandalf, dwarves, and Mr. Baggins, we are met together in the house of our friend and fellow conspirator, this most excellent and audacious hobbit. May the hair on his toes never fall out. All praise to his wine and ale. Now, I want you to think about those words very carefully, because this statement is doing two very different things. First of all, it is very complimentary to a hobbit. May the hair on his toes never fall out. Clearly, Thorin has dealt with hobbits before. He understands a bit about their world and their culture. And also, he praises his wine and ale, basically saying, thank you for the drinks, such wonderful drinks. You've made some good choices by picking out some good wine and ale. We appreciate it. Again, a compliment, something that a guest would do as just part of their role, but it seems pretty genuine here. But he also betrays some other things. He says, our friend and fellow conspirator, and he calls the hobbit not just excellent, but audacious. Audacious is such a good word. The first definition of audacious, there's a few. The first one is showing a willingness to take surprisingly bold risks. And that doesn't sound like the Bilbo that we know yet. And of course, Bilbo hangs on those words. Co-conspirator? Audacious? But Thorin goes on. And he talks about how they got together to talk about their plans, what they're going to do. And then he says, we shall soon before the break of day start on our long journey, a journey from which some of us, or perhaps all of us, except our friend and counselor, the ingenious wizard Gandalf, may never return. And this is another one of those moments that is foreshadowing the future of this story. And not just the future of this story, but in some ways is even setting up our expectations for the Lord of the Rings. Yeah, Thorin doesn't know it yet, but not everybody returns. And if you're one of the very few people who's probably listening to this that's never read The Hobbit or watched The Hobbit movies, spoiler, just skip ahead like 5 seconds, but Thorin doesn't return either. End of spoiler. Or maybe there's more spoilers for Lord of the Rings in this part, but let's move into the Lord of the Rings. We don't know it yet, but Gandalf will be involved in the next story as well. And we will have certain expectations of him from this book, including the idea that Thorin believes that if any of them would make it back, it's going to be Gandalf. So when we get to a Mines of Moria moment and Gandalf falls, it's even more of a surprise. There's no way. He's the one that's not supposed to die. How can this happen? It sets it up to be even more tragic. And then we have I guess you could say a narrator's moment. And not because the narrator infringes on this moment, but because the words that Thorin is using here are for us, the audience. He's explaining something that most of the characters would know that we don't. And he mentions here for some of the younger dwarves, which is Killy and Philly, which is nice that we now understand a little bit more about their ages. And for Bilbo, those are kind of our eyes into this world, I guess you could say. He's about to explain exactly what's going on. And we, the readers, are interested in this. This is supposed to be a tease because he's about to tell us, okay, here's really what's about to happen. And then Bilbo interrupts. In this moment is wonderful because it tells us so much about Bilbo's personality. But first we get this kind of comedic moment. We find out that poor Bilbo couldn't bear it any longer. At may never return, he began to feel a shriek coming up inside, and very soon it burst out like the whistle of an engine coming out of a tunnel. This is supposed to be comedic, I think. All the dwarves sprang up, knocking over the table. Gandalf struck a blue light at the end of his magic staff, and in its firework glare, the poor little hobbit could be seen kneeling on the hearth rug, shaking like a jelly that was melting. There's a few points of note here. First of all, this is the first time that we've really known or found out or seen that Gandalf can create light and or fire. It's described as like a firework glare, so I have to imagine it might be sparking or something like that. And we know that he creates fireworks at this point, but he's actually creating light on his staff, which becomes useful in the future. Also, we get this description about an engine coming out of a tunnel. That's not something that people in this world would understand. That's something that we, the reader, would understand. This is a description from the narrator for us, not in the language of the people of this world, but in our language. But then when we get the description about Bilbo on the hearthrug shaking like a jelly that was melting, that's language that Bilbo would understand because it's food. And then we end up with the almost slapstick moment there where he falls on the floor and he keeps calling out, struck by lightning, because of the flash of light from the staff. And eventually, he settles down. Gandalf explains that he's an excitable little fellow and he gets these funny, queer fits, but he is one of the best. And he starts to reassure the dwarves, one of the best, as fierce as a dragon in a pinch. And again, we get this foreshadowing, but also insight here into Bilbo's character. It sounds funny. It sounds like Gandalf's just kind of making something up in order to defend Bilbo. But what we actually find out is that Bilbo is as fierce as a dragon in a pinch. Strangely enough. And we're about to see a little glimpse of this. The narrator chimes in and says, that's just poetical exaggeration when applied to any hobbit. Even the old Took's great-granduncle, the famous Bull-roarer Took, who was so huge for a hobbit that he could ride a horse, which I'm sure was a point of pride for a hobbit. And this is where we get the famous explanation about the invention of golf, which again, I think is supposed to be pretty funny, but may also be true. I'm not sure. It's one of those points where it's like, well, is this a funny story that actually happened? Or was this something from so long ago that everybody just started to make up details? Or maybe, being that old bull roarer was a Took, he was prone to exaggeration and just kind of made it up himself. We don't really know. But we do know that he was a Took. And that means that there's a piece of this inside Bilbo. And I love the next paragraph, the way it says, in the meanwhile, however, Bull Roarer's gentler descendant was reviving in the drawing room. So Bilbo's not exactly Bull Roarer yet, but maybe he'll be braver. And again, that's coming. And after the dwarves see all of this, they start to ask some questions. They say, will he do you think? It is all very well for Gandalf to talk about this hobbit being fierce, but one shriek like that in a moment of excitement would be enough to wake the dragon and all his relatives and kill the lot of us. I think it sounded more like fright than excitement. This not only gives us insight into the dwarves and their doubts of the situation, and the fact that they've been very polite, even though for them this must be very odd as well. They've described exactly the kind of thing that they're going to be hiring Bilbo to do. To be close enough to a dragon so that should he fall in a fit of excitement, it would mean the death of all of them. They go on and say, in fact, if it had not been for the sign on the door, I should have been sure we had come to the wrong house. As soon as I clapped eyes on the little fellow bobbing and puffing on the mat, I had my doubts. He looks more like a grocer than a burglar. And at that moment, something changes in Bilbo. And we know for a fact, it says here that the Took side had won. At that comment, there was no more Baggins. He went full on Took. He suddenly felt he would go without bed and breakfast to be thought fierce. As for little fellow bobbing on the mat, it almost made him really fierce. He's a little guy. He's this little hobbit man who is very gentle. He's soft. He likes his food and his comforts. But hold on a minute. You can't insult me like that. And it's kind of odd when you think about it. Why would Bilbo be insulted for not being called not fierce? Wouldn't he like that? Wouldn't somebody who doesn't go on adventures want to be not fierce? But deep down inside, he knew that he is fierce. And he knew that he wanted the respect of these dwarves. Why? Simply because that part of him existed and it was the truth. And it needed to come out. That's my theory on this. If you have other ideas, other theories on exactly why that would be, please let me know. But I'm pretty sure this is the moment where that side of his personality said, hold on a minute. This is who I really am. And you're about to find out. And I'm about to take apart these very next two paragraphs and just tear them to bits and get into all the details on that. But before I do that, I have to go thank our patrons. So don't go anywhere. I'll be right back. It's time for that spring reset. I'm taking a look at everything in my closet and figuring out that, oh no, this absolutely needs to go. And it's about time I replace things so that my clothes aren't older than my 15-year-old. Now you might think that they lasted that long because they were well made, but no, they're in terrible condition. Unlike the new jeans I just got from Quince. Jeans have always been my personal go-to because you can kind of wear them for lots of different things, but maybe they're not your thing. Maybe you're looking for, 100% European linen with insanely soft flow knit activewear fabric. It's definitely getting warmer, and their flow knit activewear is moisture wicking, anti-odor, and soft enough that you'll actually want to wear it every day. So pick out what you want. You can't go wrong because they have prices 50 to 60% less than similar brands. And like I said before, they are high quality. I continue to wear their clothes all the time. And I know that these new jeans are going to last me a lot better than the other things in my wardrobe. And on top of it, they look great. They're so comfortable. And I spent just as much on the jeans that I am now cleaning out of my wardrobe. So if you're looking for something better, just all around better, go check out Quince. So go do it right now. Refresh your wardrobe with Quince. Go to quince.com/ringslore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Now available in Canada too. Go to quince.com/ringslore for free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ringslore. Welcome to the middle of the show. I'm so glad that you are all here. I hope you are enjoying all the wonderful things that you can get as part of the Patreon if you are a patron member. And if you're not, I would love for you to check it out, especially because I've been adding even more bonus stuff. So not only are there bonus episodes, but there are bonus gameplay episodes where I play Lord of the Rings online, and it's a lot of fun. And you can join me during the live streams and all of that stuff at twitch.tv/robotsradio. And if you miss those, you can always listen or watch back on the Patreon. So head over to patreon.com/LOTR Lorecast to check all that out. And we have to shout out our VIP patrons. We don't have any new people to shout out this week, but if you sign up, you'll get a shout out. And if you're a VIP patron, you get a shout out every week, like AK Music Lover, Apollo, Aragorn III, Alte Morton, Austin C, Azzle Razzle, Barney D, Bo, Black Squirrel, Brandy D, Cutter Metalworks, Daniel Nightweaver, David S, David M, Divine Madman, Fulcrum, Gimli a Break, Gemma D, Jesse P, Jezer, Katie S, Capenna, Lori B, man, I'm doing terrible today, Mason Weathertop, Michael M, Nick K, Nostrils of Sauron, Patrick W, Richard J, Rivqua, Rosie Rose, Sam B, Seju, TJT, and Tour Son of Hoor. Thank you for all your support and all your love and all of your cookies that you send me in the mail. They're delicious. That doesn't happen, but never say never. Also, if you'd like to help out in other ways, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. I'll read out your words on a future episode, so it's a great way to be involved with the show. You can also rate the show on Spotify. 5 stars would be wonderful, or wherever you listen to this. And you can also share it with your friends. All of that stuff is super helpful, and I would appreciate the support. All right, let's get back to the rest of the story. Here we go. So here's Bilbo's defense of himself, and we're going to take this apart bit by bit. Here we go. "Pardon me," he said, "if I have overheard words that you were saying." Which he has. We know this. He's still being a little polite here. "I don't pretend to understand what you're talking about, or your reference to burglars." So he's very clear in saying, like, I still don't fully understand what's going on here, or what any of this has to do with a burglar, which of course would be something that would be kind of scary to a hobbit. Burglars, excitement. Why would you think I would be a burglar? That sounds like a terrible job. That's what bad people do. I don't understand it, right? How does that make sense? But he goes on. "But I think I am right in believing this is what he called being on his dignity, that you think I am no good." Being on his dignity, right? Like, this is the moment where he has to stand up for himself and say, oh no, I may be a hobbit, I may be a Baggins, but I'm good. Like, I can take care of myself. Don't tell me what I can't do. It has that kind of vibe, right? That, like, John Locke from Lost. Wow, that's an old pull. Don't tell me what I can't do. I'll show you. And he says, "I'll show you. I have no signs on my door. It was painted a week ago." So he's starting to clarify some things now. Like, wait, no, the door was painted. There's nothing on it. I know for sure. "And I'm quite sure you have come to the wrong house." Like, okay, if you were looking for a house with a sign on the door, then this all must be a mistake, first of all, because that doesn't make any sense to me. And then he goes on. "As soon as I saw your funny faces on the doorstep, I had my doubts." Now he's getting a little brash. Funny faces? Telling the dwarves they have funny faces? These are 13 individuals in his home right now. 12 dwarves and a wizard. And he's going to stand up for himself and start insulting them? He is the kind of person who eats multiple meals a day and sits on his front porch smoking a pipe. These dwarves are adventurers. They have tools and weapons and instruments. They are road-worn. These are not the kinds of people who you just insult in a situation. And yet he does. There's something about this moment where he stands up for himself with no regard to personal safety. They are in his home. He doesn't really know these people. If they wanted to, they could tie him up and mug him and steal all of his things. But yet, he presses on. "But treat it as the right one. Tell me what you want done, and I will try." This is another interesting point. He thinks they're in the wrong home. And even though they're in the wrong home, he's like, give me a test. I can do it. I might not be the person you were looking for, but I can do it. "If I have to walk from here to east of east and fight the wild wereworms in the last desert, I had a great-great-great-granduncle once, Bullroarer-Took," and then it trails off, right? This is so cool because he brings up a very far away place. Before, it seemed like anything beyond the water was so far away. And we know Hobbiton's fairly spread out. We went over the map in the patron bonus episode last week, but it's not that spread out. It's not that big. Now, all of a sudden, he pulls a reference to a wereworm in the last desert to the far east of the continent. Places that we don't even have maps of. How does Bilbo know about that? Maybe he was listening to Gandalf's stories when he was a little hobbit. Maybe those things did excite him. They planted their seeds in his consciousness and have blossomed over time. And then Glowin responds, yes, but that was long ago. Talking about Bull Roarer Took and how, what does this have to do with you? I was talking about you, and I assure you there is a mark on the door, the usual one in the trade, or used to be. And here's what the mark means. Burglar wants a good job, plenty of excitement, and reasonable reward. Totally doesn't seem like the kind of thing Bilbo would have put there. And then Glowin says you could call it expert treasure hunter instead of burglar if you like, which is a wonderful addition because I think especially for children, the idea of seeing your protagonist, a character that you're supposed to like, Bilbo, turn into a burglar, that sounds like a bad guy. Why would you want him to be a bad guy? But if you call it an expert treasure hunter, that sounds like a good guy. That sounds like somebody who is off on adventures, bringing back all sorts of wonderful things. It also probably sounds a little bit better to Bilbo as well. Glowin goes on and says, some of them do. It's all the same to us. Like, we don't care what you call yourself as long as you can get the job done, because we're men of action, or dwarves of action. We're only worried about getting the job done. And then the focus is turned back to Gandalf. Gandalf told us there was a man of the sort in these parts looking for a job at once. And he had arranged for a meeting here this Wednesday, tea time. And Gandalf defends himself. He says, of course, there's a mark. I put it there for good reason. You asked me to find the 14th man. And he goes on and basically defends himself. He says, no, this is the right place. I put the mark there. And then he says, you can stop at 13 and have all the bad luck you like, or go back to digging coal. And this gives us other insight as well in two different ways. First of all, it seems that the dwarves have been providing for themselves by digging coal. They've been working in mines, which is something that they may be familiar with, but somebody like Thorin, that would be below his station. But they needed to do something to provide for themselves because they've been ousted from their home. So they have been coal miners, probably working for men nearby in local mines somewhere. The other thing that we get is that Gandalf uses the term 13 as being unlucky. And either he believes in the actual luck of numbers, or he's playing on the beliefs of the dwarves in order to convince them that they need one more. And if we back up a little bit and we understand what's about to happen, it makes sense. Imagine it like this. Gandalf learns that Thorin has a plan to take back his mountain, or Gandalf seeds the plan in Thorin's mind. Either way, he knows that it is something that needs to be done because there's probably still a dragon there. And in order to determine if the dragon is there, somebody's going to need to sneak in and see what's going on. And he looks at all the dwarves and he sees that they are very capable, but they are also dwarves. They tend to be a little bit loud. And even though they're brave, they're not particularly good at sneaking. But who would be good at sneaking? A hobbit. Which hobbit? Well, this descendant of Bull Roarer Took has enough Took in him that he might be brave enough yet. We just have to give him the opportunity. And in this situation right here, we get the very first moment where we see Bilbo's bravery bubble to the surface. When he defends himself in front of all the dwarves. This is the first time, and it's very similar to other moments later on in the story, whether it's the trolls or the spiders in the forest or the dragon himself. When put in a pinch and when challenged, Bilbo rises to the occasion, and he starts here, simply by defending himself to these other people in his home. And so Gandalf defends Bilbo as well. He says, this is the guy, and he scowls at Glowin and basically gives him such a face that he huddles back in his chair. Bilbo tries to talk again as well, but Gandalf knows that he's already said his piece. He doesn't need to say any more. And then Gandalf decides, okay, we're going to end this argument. And he says, that's right. Let's have no more argument. I have chosen Mr. Baggins, and that ought to be enough for all of you. If I say he is a burglar he is, or will be, when the time comes, which is wonderfully prescient. There is a lot more in him than you guess, and a deal more than he has any idea of himself. You may possibly all live to thank me yet. Now, Bilbo, my boy, fetch the lamp, and let's have a little light on this. And this scene ends with the dark being pushed away. Gandalf has just physically asked for a light, but he's also elucidated the exact reason why they're there. Bilbo is a burglar, and if he doesn't know it now, he will soon. He can rise to the occasion. Gandalf's sure about it. And that should be enough for the dwarves. Thanks for tuning into these close readings. I know that they're really, really close and really, really slow, but I hope that's a good thing, and I hope you're enjoying them. Please send me some feedback. Let me know on the Discord or in a review or on the Patreon, wherever you like to communicate. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this so far, and thanks for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for listening to the Lord of the Rings Lorecast. If you'd like to learn more about other fantasy worlds, check out my other podcasts, The Elder Scrolls Lorecast, The Witcher Lorecast, and more at robotsradio.net. If you'd like to reach out, I'd love to hear from you. Send me a note on Twitter at robots_radio, or join our amazing community on the Robots Radio Discord. There are links in the show notes, or just search Robots Radio Discord, or find the link on robotsradio.net. I'll see you next time.